Welcome to the Politicrat. I am Omar Moore. It is Thursday, March the 4th, 2021. On this edition of the Politicrat, dude, where's my stimulus check? Welcome back. I'm going to get to the topic in a few short moments and put some meat, or if you're a vegetarian or pescatarian, as I am, put some fish on the bones. No, that doesn't work either. Oh, dearie me. See, the language we speak in. And these expressions that we inherit or that we just imbibe or we just speak, right? And we half the time don't even have a clue where these things come from. Maybe we're not supposed to be that we should be analytical, but maybe we don't. Maybe we just don't think about the things we say sometimes and the kinds of meanings that they ascribe that we just don't care about, which we should care about. But that's another story. I've been talking about language now for a few weeks because, again, and I'm going to keep talking about it because I think it's important, but not so much on this episode in terms of talking about it, that is. That will be another discussion for another time. But what I do want to say quickly is just a few things about some of the stories that have jumped out at me over the last 24 hours. Before getting to the main event of the podcast. And one of them is this political contretemps really brewing now over the last few days in Scotland due to the Alex Salmond, or Alex Salmond is the pronunciation, Salmond, Alex Salmond inquiry that happened last year. He had been accused of sexual harassment and actually had been accused also of rape by at least one, if not two women. He was put on trial, was cleared of the charges in all counts in a 2-week trial in March of 2020, so a year ago. And it was a 2-week trial. The jury acquitted him. Now, Alex Salmond, for those who may not be aware, was the Scottish First Minister, Scotland's First Minister. Now, how this works in the UK, let me just explain this as quickly and as clearly as possible. The United Kingdom is made up of 4 nations. One of them is England, one of them is Scotland, one of them is Northern Ireland, and one of them is Wales. And each of those 4 nations has a leader or head of state in it. Now, the Prime Minister, which is the person who is the lead minister for all of the United Kingdom, is Boris Johnson. And he, of course, resides in 10 Downing Street in London, in England. Each of the other nations has a First Minister, not a Prime Minister, because that's the first among equals minister, who would be Boris Johnson. And so that's why that title is given. He is the head of state in the United Kingdom officially. But there are ministers who represent the other 3 nations in the United Kingdom. And in Wales, at the moment, I believe it's Mark Drakeford. I may have that name wrong. I should know this since I'm from the UK, since I'm from England. I should know this at the top of my head. I should know this, but I do not think I do. Well, I think I do. Let me try and see if I can do it. I think it's Mark Drakeford is the First Minister in Wales. In Northern Ireland, it would be the leader of the DUP, the Democratic Unionist Party, and that would be Arlene Foster. Arlene Foster, the First Minister there in Northern Ireland. And in Scotland, it would be currently Nicola Sturgeon, who is the leader of the Scottish National Party, the SNP. Boris Johnson is the leader of the Conservative Party, the Conservatives in England. Now, Alex Salmond was at one point the Scottish First Minister of the same country, Scotland, obviously, and was the leader of the Scottish National Party. Now, Nicola Sturgeon had been great friends, really close friends with Alex Salmond for 30 years. And in some ways, he was a mentor to her. And she was the deputy under Alex Salmond when he was the Scottish First Minister and when he was the leader of the SNP, the Scottish National Party. She was the second in command there, essentially. And when he stepped down or ended his reign, I think, when was that? 2014 or 15, or whenever it was, she was the heir apparent. She ended up, when the SNP has had for a number of years now, has had a long favorability in terms of the party. They are the predominant party in Scotland, and the Scottish Conservatives and Scottish Labour are not. Let's put it that way. So the Scottish National Party is the predominant force in Scottish politics. There have been referendums to make Scotland an independent nation. There's IndyRef 2, which is supposedly coming. I don't know when. It has been talked about for a number of years now. We know what happened in whenever that was, 2014 or so. I think that was when Alex Salmond, after that referendum failed for Scottish independence, I think that's when Alex Salmond stepped down. But then we found out about these allegations, which I'll get to. But the point is that there's an IndyRef 2 that is supposedly on the horizon. Nicola Sturgeon, the Scottish First Minister, has been talking about it now for a number of years. Now that Brexit has terrorized all of us in the United Kingdom and beyond, there is the renewed call for IndyRef 2. Now, whether that happens or not, dear listener, is another story. And whenever it happens, I don't know when it will. I don't want to give you dates because then I would be wrong. I don't like being wrong. Any more than you do. Oh, dear, oh, dear. Well, I mean, I don't like being wrong. But if I am wrong, I admit it, and I will put up my hand. And that's that's the important part, that you acknowledge that you're wrong and that you do better and vow to do better and actually do better. But the whole point of this is to explain that the friendship between Nicola Sturgeon and Alex Salmond disintegrated over the last, goodness knows how many, in the 12 months or more, over these last 12 months, because of the allegations that have been made. No, well, those weren't the reason. The allegations weren't the reason. Let me just really be clear about, speaking of language and how we speak and what we say and what we mean. It was that Alex Salmond, as I said, had been acquitted of these charges, very serious charges, that, there were several women who had said that Alex Salmond was sexually harassing them, had done so. There were rape charges also, that he had raped one of the women that made these allegations, had brought the allegation that she had been raped by Alex Salmond. As I said, the jury in the case last year, almost a year ago now, almost exactly a year ago, it was around March 23rd of last year, 2020, and they, after 2 weeks, had a trial. It was a 2-week trial, which is not very long for these serious allegations. And I wonder why it had. Was it because Alex Salmond is a powerful man? Keep that one floating in the background, people, because somehow that may have something to do with it, don't you think? A 2-week trial when you're talking about rape? Seriously? A 2-week trial? That's a whole nother thing that should be thought about too, by the way. And when the trial was over, the jury said, not guilty, and he walked out of there. Then was not happy with the whole situation. He had said that he was innocent. Everybody does. Some people are, but the vast majority, no. But Alex Salmond said that he didn't do these horrible, heinous things. And he said, this investigation into me, because there was an investigation in it, this investigation was unlawful. And I really now want to make it clear that I am not happy. So he ended up pleading that case and ended up getting a £512,000 judgment in his favor, having proven that the investigation being run by the SNP, Scottish National Party, had been unlawful. And this brought this whole firestorm. And he then turned around and accused Nicola Sturgeon of breaching the Ministerial Code. And that's all happened in the last few months and few days at this inquiry that's going on. She's been brought before, she being Nicola Sturgeon, the current First Minister, has been brought yesterday before the committee up in Holyrood in Scotland to investigate this. And this accusation that Alex Salmond has made against his formerly really close friend Nicola Sturgeon, and now party leader of the Scottish National Party and the First Minister of Scotland, is a really problematic thing for Nicola Sturgeon, because she's been accused of mishandling the complaints. And there's no question that there were some issues about how that had been done in the SNP. And the twist to all of this in the Scottish National Party is that Nicola Sturgeon's husband is the chief executive of the Scottish National Party. So there's a whole lot of things that the opponents of Nicola Sturgeon, those who may be in the Scottish Conservative Party, or even the Scottish Labour Party, are looking at and saying, wait a minute, she's got her husband there as the chief executive of the party. Now, he's been the chief executive for a little while, at least. And these accusations of her mishandling the complaint and lying, and these are the allegations. So now he is snapped back with Salmond, that is, has snapped back and said, yeah, I know she's violated the Ministerial Code, and the whole party has conspired against me. And so he testified last Friday for about 6 hours or so, and he was saying all these things that Nicola Sturgeon, his once very close friend, conspired against him, and the whole Scottish National Party conspired against me. And it just sounds to me absurd. Now, look, full disclosure, I actually appreciate Nicola Sturgeon. I think she's a really good political leader. Has she made some problematic mistakes? Yes. I will be the first to say that. I think she has made some mistakes, and she's, that's a problem. Above board, though, for the very most part, I think she has done well in Scotland, and she's been a good, solid leader for Scotland, and is someone who wants Scottish independence. I think she stood up very well to Boris Johnson. I think she stood up well to the Tories in general, the Conservatives, the Tories in general. The Scottish National Party is the predominant force, so that's where the politics angle is too, because the Scottish Conservatives, who really have been obliterated in Scotland, let's face it, and the Scottish Labour Party, which really isn't the force that it would love to be, they want power. They want the kind of power that Sturgeon and the SNP have. And those of you from Scotland who know this can correct me if I'm wrong on any of this. But they want power. And this is another, forgive my cynicism, this is another way for them to try to get it. Do they care about the rape allegations? I don't know that they do. Do I want to put words in their mouth and have them not defend themselves and give my take and suggest that they don't give a damn about a woman who makes these allegations, who was raped? I think she, but the jury said she wasn't. And since Alex Salmond was found not to have raped a woman, now, of course, it doesn't mean that he actually didn't do it, by the way, folks. It is a legal judgment, right? And that is the way that these things get done, right? Is that just because a jury says that a woman was not raped, does it mean that she wasn't actually raped? Of course it doesn't mean that. It is a legal judgment. And that is the way that, most societies these days adjudicate such serious matters. I mean, again, how many times have people been acquitted of killing black folk? Police officers. How many times? With videotape all over the place. Now, there wasn't any videotapes in this situation. And I dare say if there were, I would hope that Alex Salmond would have been convicted. I would hope so. But how many times have you seen that with video? With police shooting someone dead, usually a black person. And jury looks at it. It doesn't even get to the jury these days. Remember the days of Rodney King when a jury would actually get these cases to begin with? And then they would still say no. Predominantly white juries would still say no, there's not enough here. No. Now it doesn't even get to the DA because the DA decides, well, we're not even bringing the charges here. Nothing to see here. But all of this is to say that Alex Salmond now has said, oh no, Nicola Sturgeon is part of this conspiracy against him to destroy his political career, to get him out of there. And the Scottish Conservatives and the Scottish Labour are going, yeah. And the thing is, Scottish Conservatives in particular, they want power. I mean, they all want power. Everybody wants power. You want power. I want power. Maybe we don't. Maybe we just want a better world. Maybe we don't want power. Maybe we just want a better world to live in. We want a better planet. And people being decent to each other and loving each other. We want people to love again. We don't want stinking power. We want people who are powerful to do what we voted them in to do. And Alex Salmond is saying that Nicola Sturgeon now and the SNP are virulently against him. And she said in 7.5+ hours of testimony. Sound familiar? Nicola Sturgeon meet Hillary Clinton, who actually, she outlasted you though, Nicola, by another 3 hours plus, because she, during her election run in 2015, that she announced in 2015 that she was going to run that she was running for 2016's election. And in 2015, the Republicans, in their infinite wisdom, put her on the witness stand before the House Republicans, who grilled her for 11 hours. So she beat you by 4 hours, Nicola. First Minister Sturgeon, I'm sorry. But you see the pattern here, right? Women being put on and there's an election coming up. There's elections all over the country, all over the UK, coming up in May. So you know what's going on here, folks. This is all politics. And it's really, I hate to sound as if because I'm not dismissing this at all. But the real issue here is the allegations, right? But again, they've been put in court and they've been adjudicated and litigated. And a jury said, no, nothing to see here. This is also, this is about power, isn't it? It is about power. It is about power. Just like rape is about power and violence and control. That's what that's about as well. And Nicola Sturgeon was up yesterday, the Scottish First Minister. It was unreal. Over 7.5 hours. And I watched a lot of it. And not once did I see her. Well, not once did she lose her cool. There was one moment with the final hour or so of the proceedings at Holyrood, the Holyrood Commission there, up in Scotland yesterday. They asked her, one of the MSPs, members of the Scottish Parliament, that's what MSP means. If you see that next to a Scottish politician's name, that MSP means Member of Scottish Parliament. Whereas if you see it in England, MP means Member of Parliament. But the bottom line is, because there's devolved government meaning that each of the other nations in the UK has their own parliamentary system in their own country, but the one that presides over the entire four nations is the one in Westminster in London, where Boris Johnson and the House of Commons reside and all that. So MSP means Member of the Scottish Parliament. And so there was this one person, I think her name was Jackie Bailey, and she asked this very silly, trite question, really silly question, I think, or at least a question designed to try to get under the skin of Nicola Sturgeon. And I believe Jackie Bailey may be one of the Scottish Conservatives. I don't know. So I don't know her party affiliation. I didn't look it up. But she asked this question, and Nicola Sturgeon, and I wish I could play the audio of this, she said, look, I've answered this question before, which she had done. And you've asked me it 2 or 3 other times or one other time. And she was slightly irritated by that. And that was the only time, at least the time that I was watching. I didn't watch the full nearly 8 hours of it, but I watched quite a bit of it. And I think that was the only time where she even showed a flicker of irritation, much less losing your cool. I mean, she was no Brett Kavanaugh, the guy that actually did violate women, or at least, violate women by invading their physical space and jumping on them and holding. That's a violation of a woman. If you're invading her physical space and you're putting your hands on her and you're jumping up and down, I mean, come on. No, that guy was sitting for the Supreme. This was let's just put this in real context, right? So you've got the two women, Hillary Clinton and Nicola Sturgeon, been grilled for hours, and Sturgeon was grilled for hours, and they didn't bat an eyelid, except for one minor little thing over one of these the MSPs, Jackie Bailey, asking this really silly question designed to try to get a rise out of Nicola Sturgeon. And she didn't bat an eye, Sturgeon. First Minister Sturgeon didn't bat an eyelid. She just said, look, I've answered this question before. And it was just like the same thing with Hillary Clinton when she said, what difference does it make? And then, of course, the Republicans used that in a commercial because they wanted their commercial. It was all politics. That was 2015, October or so of 2015, right near the end of October, or whenever it was, in November or October. I think it was October. And even at the time, Kevin McCarthy, who wanted to be Speaker of the House so bad. The Republican wanted to be Speaker of the House so bad, he actually stepped in it and admitted the reason why we did this to Hillary Clinton was because we wanted to hurt her election chances the following year. Oh, he said something he wasn't supposed to say out loud. Kevin McCarthy. The same Kevin McCarthy who was telling Trump to go and F himself during January 6th, during the terrorist attack that was going on, when it was clear that Trump was not going to do anything to call off these rabid terrorist dogs. It was that Kevin McCarthy, the one that also went down to Mar-a-Lago after that whole thing. Gosh, politics does make for some strange bedfellows, But you add what happened with Hillary Clinton in an election year or election season, because it was 2015 and 16, right? This thing with Nicola Sturgeon now, this whole inquiry, Did she break? And she can lose her job for this, by the way. The Ministerial Code, and I've talked about this before in the UK, is very serious. It's a political thing. It's not a criminal matter. It's a political thing. But nonetheless, you are bound by it. If you are found by some kind of commission to have violated the Ministerial Code, which is what this Holyrood thing is about with Nicola Sturgeon now, the committee decides whether or not she's broken and if she has broken, if they find in Holyrood that she has broken the Ministerial Code, she's violated it. If they find that, she is now obligated to resign forthwith from her position immediately. Forthwith. Priti Patel was supposed to do that last year. She did not. When it was clear that she was bullying people. Or it might have been earlier this year. God, this year seems like more than 8 months old. And it's only 2 months plus older. But I forget when it was. It might have been January. Or it might have been late last year. I think it was last year. It was last year, 2020. When she clearly had violated the Ministerial Code. And a finding was made to that effect, and the Prime Minister, Boris Johnson, said, no, I overruled. Nothing to see here. And so Priti Patel kept her job as Home Secretary. And the question is, will Nicola Sturgeon keep hers as Scotland's First Minister? Because it's a political year, because there's going to be elections in the UK in May of this year, coming up in a few months. So that's what this is all about. Shame it's not about the issues, but we know how that goes. So you contrast the women I've just mentioned in politics with the man that I have mentioned, Brett Kavanaugh, who was on the griddle, and he wasn't even really being grilled that badly at all. I mean, I think that the women, the female senators, did a better job than the male senators did. And remember, you had, if you cast your mind back to that time in 2018, I believe it was, 2017 or 18, you may remember that there was this special questioner that the Republicans had. It was such a theatrical thing because we don't want to be seen to be going hard at Dr. Christine Blasey Ford, who brought these allegations. And so we're going to have a female, we're going to have a woman, a white woman, sit there and ask the questions. And she's a prosecutor, but she's asking these questions on behalf of the Republicans. Oh, God. I mean, this is just so bad. It's just the way that we do things in America. Oh, dear. Look, I do like the country. I do. I'm not sitting here hating America at all. I'm just looking at if you love the country, as I do, you should be pointing out the things that are good about it and that aren't good about it. And lately, or in many instances, there are not good things about it. And you've got to point them out and care about them because you want to care enough to change them. This goes for any country, not just the United States. It goes for the United Kingdom. It goes for Germany, France, any country on the African continent, Japan as well. It goes for Israel. It goes for Pakistan. In any country on the planet, it goes for. If you love the country that you are a part of, live in, or from, then you should care enough to point out the things about it that you want to change and improve, that need to change and improve drastically. And so when Brett Kavanaugh's there screaming at Senator Amy Klobuchar and asking her questions, well, there's your father and alcohol. I mean, seriously? And that scarcely gets talked about. Well, in some quarters of the media it did. But that doesn't get looked at more. And that doesn't get weighed as something that would disqualify him for his temperament alone. You know? That doesn't get anything, much less the serious severity of the allegations. Oh, but no, he was shouting. I'll never forget that. He was angry and snarling and shouting. And come on, let me be a Supreme Court nominee and let me shout. Let me, a black man, right, shout and snarl at some white female senators or any senator, black, white. Maybe these folks wouldn't care if I was shouting at Kamala Harris at the time. She was the senator of this great state of California. And imagine if I was shouting at her, or anybody, Cory Booker, Senator Booker. Maybe they wouldn't care so much. They, whoever they are, I think you know who they are. But think about that. Let me shout at some white senator. Let me shout at them. I'm your Supreme Court nominee, and I'm a practicing attorney, and this process is rigged. And how dare you accuse me? And is your father an alcoholic? I mean, could you imagine me or any black person? It doesn't have to be me. It's just because I'm doing this podcast that you're listening to, and thank you for listening to it. But could you imagine a black person? Let me make it a black woman. Can you imagine a black woman nominated for the U.S. Supreme Court? And we still don't have one of those individuals, by the way, on the Supreme Court, a black woman. It would be really good if we did. It's way past time. We don't have any Asians either, by the way, on the Supreme Court. It would be a good time to do that. Could you imagine a black woman saying to Senator Klobuchar or any senator, particularly these white, I think back to Anita Hill, who is not a Supreme Court nominee, but was treated as if she was one, because she was put on trial 30 years ago almost. And I've talked about this, of course, in numerous episodes. Did a forum on this as well with a vastly white Zoom audience. We had some really good, honest, open exchanges about gender and race. It was really important, and I hope you get to listen to it because it's one of the previous episodes in this podcast. But can you just imagine that Anita Hill cursed out Joe Biden when he was on the Senate Judiciary Committee, and all these other white senators, white male senators, just sitting there, Orrin Hatch and Arlen Specter? Imagine if she had done that. What about if Clarence Thomas had done that? And he kind of did bristle, didn't he? All these Republicans, they bristle. These Republican men, they bristle, don't they? They get angry. I don't see it too much on the Democratic side, by the way. Maybe there's been some. I haven't seen it lately. But Brett Kavanaugh did. He's snarling. Imagine Anita Hill, and she's not even a nominee, going and screaming. Imagine Lloyd Austin, who, of course, is now the defense secretary here in the U.S. I don't think he got off to a very good start with this attack on Syria. I think it's absolutely disgraceful. It's basically a war crime, even though there's no war, but there's a declaration of one. And the excuse being, we are retaliating. No, that's not an excuse when you don't go to Congress. I don't care what your administration, I don't care what you look like, who you are. If you're doing something wrong, you're going to be called out. And you're going to be challenged to be better. I challenge myself to be better, for God's sakes. I'm not going to not do that with someone who's got political power. Really? I'm going to challenge myself to be better in my life and things I do, and come on here and talk to you and do the same with you, and I'm not going to do that for myself? Come on. That's not happening here. I'm not having that for myself, much less any, come on. This is the thing. So I'm not going to hide behind the pom-poms of one party or another here in the U.S. when it comes to what's wrong. What's wrong is wrong. And what's wrong is that Andrew Cuomo still has a job. What's wrong is that Madison Cawthorn still has a job. What's wrong, quite frankly, Joe Biden. Let's be really honest here. And I'm glad that I voted for him, even though I know that I would. I mean, I know his background, or I believe I do. And I'm glad to say that I voted for him and not the other guy, because I never would have voted for the other guy. And a third party don't cut it here. But if we're being honest, would we also be saying that Joe Biden should be taking a step away and that maybe we should have Kamala Harris right now in the job of president? Or is that me being so utterly scandalous? Welcome back. I laugh because you could be fooled, and you could be forgiven into or for thinking that I was playing an early April Fool's joke on you. I know we're still over 3.5 weeks away from April Fool's Day, just about 3.5 weeks. Oh my God, April 1st is almost here. Oh my God. And you know what's coming 2 weeks after that if you're in the United States? Just play that Beatles song and you know which one I'm talking about. But you'd be forgiven for thinking I'm trying to fool you, because I spent half an hour or so talking about the issue that was not the main part of this episode. Such is life. Such is unscripted life. But now I am going to talk about the main event of the evening. It's not boxing. I'm going to verbally box. Well, no, I'm not going to verbally box. I'm going to just say that something that's on the minds of people who are going through hell. Because I think many of us around the world are going through all kinds of hell with COVID-19. The vaccination process is going fairly well in the United Kingdom. Of course, there are still problems with black people, brown people, native people not getting this vaccine. And no, for those who say that, oh, it's because they're skeptical. No. This isn't about skepticism. And by the way, when people talk about skepticism, as I've said before here, please mention and start with the reason why the skepticism comes. It's not that they're just skeptical. Oh, they're skeptical, because some people are just naturally skeptical, and some people are, including some black people, skeptical about, and they're being fed misinformation. Can we also make sure that we mention that? That you've got all these Facebook groups and this stuff on other social media who are putting all these lies and spending money on advertising, lying to black and brown communities. Oh, they put something in the vaccine, you see. Lies. It's not true. It's a lie. They put something in a vaccine. They don't. Let's also add that. And let's also add, which is what I was trying to get to, that there's been generations of American government and medical experimentation on black and brown bodies. Generations of black people being experimented upon. Native Americans being brown people experimented on by the medical community, by the United States government. Generations of black women. Read the book Medical Apartheid by Harriet Washington. That's my book recommendation for Women's History Year. Read that book. This particular episode for Women's History Year. Lest you forget that I would somehow do these episodes in March and not talk about some of the books I would recommend for Women's History Month. Yeah. Oh, not me. You can't catch me out there, dear listener. Oh dear, yeah. Someone thought that he would talk about Black History Month or Black History Year, but he wouldn't say anything about Women's History Year. No. Come on. I will one up anyone on that bone of contention, if it is out there. But this is really serious stuff. This is very, very serious indeed. There's still lots of communities who are not getting this vaccine. And what's been happening is, and I've mentioned this before, and some of the guests I've had on over the last few months have mentioned this too. And there is the COVAX project, which is a project designed to make sure that these vaccines get to those most in need, Black and brown communities and other communities that need this vaccine, in desperate need of it. Essential workers who are Black and brown, and all other kinds of people who are poor, who can't afford this, who can't, it's going to be free of charge. It has been here in the US. It hasn't been everywhere else, I think, in many places. But the point I'm making is that there are these movements, the People's Vaccine Alliance, which is out there too. I know that Beata Campman, Professor Campman, Dr. Campman, when she was on with me a few weeks back, talked about COVAX, that movement. And I know that Dr. Cindy Duke, back in December of last year, talked about the People's Vaccine Alliance, which does the same kinds of things, excuse me, in terms of, pardon me, dear listener, in terms of vaccination, ensuring a movement to get vaccines distributed properly to those most in need, Black and brown communities, so that there isn't this discriminatory effect and this discrimination period, which there is. You've had all these rich people who aren't 65 and over getting these vaccines. You've got celebrities doing that. I mean, let's be honest here. Is what celebrities do essential? I mean, forgive me, because I know that there may be people who are celebrities who may listen to this podcast, and I don't know if they do or not, but if they do, I mean, this is something to consider for everybody. Is what a celebrity does essential? Is that essential work? And so therefore, if those celebrities are not 65 and over, do you think they should be getting the vaccine? That's one question, right? Because if you're not 65 years old or above, regardless of what your status is, you shouldn't be, based on what the guidelines have been, you shouldn't be getting this vaccine right now. Unless you're an educator, a teacher, for example. Right? I mean, if that's what we're really going by, or are we opening that up some more to essential workers who are not 65 and older? Do the essential workers who are under the age of 65, shouldn't they be getting a vaccine? I mean, that's the thing. But the whole reason why I start with this is because you may realize, if you live in the United States, and those of you who live in other countries may already know this too, is that we here in the United States are having an almighty battle over this COVID relief package. It's literally like there are two sides at either end, two parties at either end of a rope. And there is a literal and a figurative tug of war going on. I mean, it seems like it's literal anyway. It's definitely figurative. And the rope is being pulled to the left, then it's being pulled to the right. Then you've got some Democrats pulling the rope further to the right. Kirsten Sinema, Joe Manchin, and maybe a few others. Why? It's infuriating. And that's why I began with, dude, where's my stimulus check? I'm not asking for me personally. It's more of a figure of speech that can be found on a t-shirt. A t-shirt that is available for your purchase right now at the Politicrat Daily Podcast online store at the-politicrat.myshopify.com. Shameless plugging. Gosh, would I ever do such a thing? But seriously, dude, Where's my stimulus check? I'm not asking for me personally. I'm not even asking for a friend. I'm not. I'm asking more metaphorically and rhetorically. Because, at least rhetorically, I should say. Because that's the status of America right now, isn't it? It's like what Dr. King said back in 63 when he gave his speech. March on Washington, the Washington Mall. The promissory note has come back for black folk in the United States marked insufficient funds. America has defaulted on a promissory note. America has defaulted on its promissory note. And that note, as Dr. King said back in 1963, has come back marked insufficient funds. And here we are now in 2021, dear listener, and still, you don't have your money. Yeah, you may have got the old $600 from a previous package, but you don't have your money. You don't have your $1,400. Oh, wasn't it supposed to be $2,000? Oh, but we're splitting it. The average person in the United States of America makes under $50,000 a year. The average person. And I'm trying to understand why it is that some of the Democrats in the Senate are doing this. On the one hand, I'm going to play devil's advocate. Some of these Democrats and some of the Republicans, the moderate ones, like Senator Lisa Murkowski of Alaska, had said, look, we are looking at this bill and we're not seeing very much COVID relief in it at all. We're seeing more of it filled with pork. Those are my words. And that's a term that you know of if you follow politics here in the US, where it's called pork, all this stuff that has nothing to do with a bill, which is typically put in bills. There's pork in every bill. And you hear Republicans particularly talking about pork barrel spending, which refers to putting all of these other provisions in the bill that are unrelated to the bill. And that's all part of the compromising that gets done on Capitol Hill, or lack thereof compromising. And what happens is that all these unholy things get voted in because there's some kind of conditional agreement that says, well, I will vote for your bill on COVID relief if you put this heinous provision that we Republicans want into page 1223 of the bill. And then in some re-election campaign for Senate in 3 years from now, or 4 or 6 or whatever years from now, some Republican can point to you, or some Democrat can point to you as a Democratic senator who's running for re-election, said, she voted for that. They voted for separating kids. That was on page 1223 of the bill for COVID relief. That was really the bill that was being voted on. There wasn't actually an independent separate vote on, shall we keep removing kids from their parents or not? Should we keep removing brown children from their parents? There was no independent vote like that in the Senate. But what the campaign 2 or 4 years from now, or 6 or 8, will tell you is that now Senator Jonathan Applewise voted for removing kids from parents. And it's like, no, it doesn't work that way. I mean, there are heinous things that both of Democrats and Republicans do, like taking food out of the mouths of millions of Americans who wanted a $2,000 stimulus check or wanted a $15 minimum wage. By the way, the Democrats didn't do that. It was a Senate parliamentarian, I think her name is Elizabeth McDonough, who thought, in her infinite wisdom, that it would be a good idea because, reconciliation and this and that and all these little excuses that most people in the United States could care less about. They really don't care about why it's not happening. They just know it's not, and they just want it to happen. As I said yesterday's episode or the day before's, most people in the United States, and I dare say most people in the majority of lots of countries, do not engage politically. I would say that the engagement in politics in Europe or on the African continent or in the Far East is probably a lot higher than it is here in the US. I could be wrong about that, but I don't think I am. Somebody can email me at politicratpod@gmail.com and tell me if I'm wrong. Because I don't think so. I don't think I am. And by the way, thank you for the emails that you do send. It's much appreciated, and thank you for your support. It's very important, and I appreciate you, and I respect you, and thank you for listening again. I really do appreciate that, and please spread the word about the podcast and the store, the Politicrat Daily Podcast online store at the-politicrat.myshopify.com. Shameless plugging. Would I ever do such a thing? But the average person in the United States of America who is trying to get by, who's working those 3 jobs or not right now, doesn't care about what the reason was. All they know is what's in front of them is they don't have food for their children. All they know is that what's in front of them, they don't have but maybe another week before they're going to be evicted. What's in front of them, all they know is what's in front of them, which is that if they don't get this money, they're going to be out in the street. That's the reality of the vast majority of people. We just never see them on TV. Rarely do we see them on TV. And if they are on TV, it's always in context of, people are struggling. But this should be a daily feature in this country. Just like we should be getting to see the names and faces of every one of the nearly, 520,000 now? It may be higher. People who have died in this country, the United States, from coronavirus. Just like we should be seeing their faces every day and their names, every person. We're not. If we were living in a society that was more humane and that really cared and was not geared to property and wealth and oppression, we would see those names. We would learn those names. We would see their faces. And we would have a COVID-19 package immediately. It would happen yesterday. It wouldn't be a thing that Republicans and Democrats are haggling over. We would have this done already. If we were a society that cared, I spoke about this earlier, about loving your country and meaning that entails that you should be pointing out what's wrong of it. Because then if you don't point out what's wrong and don't push for change and don't advocate for change, then you really don't care about the country. So therefore you don't love it and you don't like it. It's that you see it then as something you can use and exploit. And it's a very selfish thing for you, not you particularly in person, dear listener, but you generally. So if one looks at the country that way, then that person does not care about it. All that person cares about, as James Baldwin would say, is their money and their profits. They don't care about anything as long as their money and their profits are where they are. And if that gets threatened, then a big stink is made by them. But there's a lot of selfishness, and that's what I'm getting at here. The selfishness, I love my country, but you don't really love it. You just love what it can do for you and you alone. And so that when there are others of us out here who are telling you that this country needs to be completely overhauled, its system at least certainly needs to be dismantled, at minimum. And we tell you this, and it is met with your obstinance and excuse making and defensiveness and silence and hatred and your racism and your misogyny and your bashing of gay people, your violence against Asian Americans, your killing of black trans women, then you don't like the country. You don't love the country either. You just care about you and you alone. And I know there's a large swath of people in that area, varying degrees of spectra on that spectrum line of that spectrum, varying degrees, but you're still in the same group. And this is not to do with party either, by the way. Got nothing to do with the political parties, because you've got political parties that are haggling. I can't imagine FDR right now. And yes, this is the same FDR that wrote and signed Executive Order 9066, for God's sakes. And if you don't know what that is, please look it up. I've mentioned it before on this podcast. But FDR, on this matter, would be rolling in his grave. Franklin Delano Roosevelt would be turning in his grave right now at not only the predicament where we're still looking at haggling over money. It's not even that much money. $1,400. Oh my goodness. I mean, the people who are haggling on Capitol Hill make that in what, a day? I mean, come on. They make that in an hour probably. If not more, in a half hour. Come on. $1,400. Denmark is laughing at us because as I keep talking about Denmark, and those of you who may be listening from there right now, to this podcast, thank you if you are. I do get emails from people in different countries. And thank you. I really do appreciate that. I get emails from different places all over the world. Thank you for listening to this podcast. A special thank you to you. I really appreciate it. And I appreciate you. And I respect you. Thank you. And keep listening, please. Denmark is one of the countries, again, it's my favorite one to mention. Now, Denmark is not like everything else, right? There's the fallback line for everything in the world is, it's not perfect, but, you know, I'm doing it myself and I want to stop. Can I just get off the world, stop this train where I do that too? I want to stop saying things that are just what I call lazy language. And maybe it's infuriating for you to be listening to me wrestle with every piece of language known to the English language. Because the English language is I almost said it again, not the most perfect language. It's not, by the way. The English language is very complicated. I think it's far more complicated than Spanish, and I can't speak a lick of Spanish, so there you go. I think it is. I think it's far more complicated than a lot of languages, including German, which I actually can speak a lick of. I almost said bonjour. I almost said bonjour after that, which would have really not been good. I'm not going to say auf Wiedersehen just yet, but that's coming up. I can count in German. I can count in at least one or two other languages, but that's beside the point. Denmark laughs because Denmark does these things automatically. And it's not the only the only country, excuse me. And there are Scandinavian countries that do this. But Denmark's not the only country. And I was about to say Denmark is not Scandinavian. But Denmark is not the only country. Norway is, Sweden is Scandinavian countries. But Denmark's not the only country that they pay. I keep saying this. They pay. There, and I would like, again, I'm still trying to work on this, among other things, trying to get a guest on about this, because this is really something that people who may not be aware should be aware of. And, there are places like Denmark, countries like Denmark, they take care of their citizenry. They take care of them. What is a nation? What is a society if it does not take care of the people in it? That those in power govern. I mean, what kind of a society is that? Is that not a banana republic? Is that what we are in America? I think we are. I've said this country's been a fascist country for a long time. People look at me sideways, when I say that to them over Zoom. Because I can't say it to person these days. Not without at least 2 masks on. And certainly not without being at least 6 feet away from them. And it doesn't have the same effect when you've got 2 masks on. So Zoom is the next best thing. It's the next best thing. We really do need to look at this, because Denmark does this. They will pay throughout this pandemic, those who are working, or those who aren't actually, but they will pay costs for the job that they would have been working in, the wages, plus more. It's not just the wage, it's the whole living, the cost of living, your expenses. It extends to your life, not just working for some company. It's for you, for your family. So they take care of your laundry. Oh, here's money for your laundry. Oh, here's money for your groceries. Oh, here's money for something else. Oh, you want to get a massage? You want to get spa treatments? Here's money for that. Oh, you gym? Oh, you want to? Here's money for that. Oh, you want to do this? You want to take a little holiday? Oh, here's money for that. It's Denmark. They're taking care of you as a person. It's not that they're just slapping some money that's just going to cover everything. They're completely making the effort, and not just making the effort, they're doing it. It's quality of life. That's the 3 words I'm trying to get to. It's quality of life. That's what is happening. That's what they're catering to. So you know what you have when you have that? You have a more productive workplace. You have an economy that works better because people aren't sick, and so they can spend the money, and they're more willing to spend it. And they're not spending it on, forgive me, prescription drugs in excess. They are spending it maybe partly on prescription drugs, and maybe not, because a lot of those drugs are low cost or free in Denmark. So they're not, so trust me, large amounts of their salary is not being spent on those things to begin with. The healthcare system's better there. The education system's better there. The quality of life there is better. The air that you breathe there is better. I know someone saying, why don't you move to Denmark, Omar? No. You see, that's the ignorance, right? That's the ignorance. That's the reactionary response that you will get, right? If you today have a conversation with a group of people, there's going to be one of them. Maybe not. It depends on if you're speaking to an audience that agrees with you or not. But there will be somebody somewhere in one of those conversations who will say, well, why don't you go to Denmark? That does not solve the issue of what's going on in the United States. Me traveling to Denmark or staying there does not solve or get rid of the problem in the United States, which is that we are not being taken care of as citizenry the way we should. I mean, that's the bottom line of this second half hour of this podcast. I'm going to link to an article from the Los Angeles Times. It's entitled, it's a fairly lengthy one, but it's a good one. Fewer, F-E-W-E-R, fewer will get COVID checks with Senate bill. And the subtitle, Democratic leaders agree to target a smaller number of Americans for $1,400 relief payments. And the one thing you should take away from this, and it's by Sarah D. Wire, W-I-R-E, as in wire, common spelling, Sarah, S-A-R-A-H, middle initial D. Sarah D. Wire wrote this in the Los Angeles Times. I want you to read that. Okay? Please. One of the things that you come away with is that President Biden, and it has a caption of a photo of him there saying this, that says this. President Biden, he liked the House plan. He was in favor of the House bill that had the $15 an hour provision, that had all these other things that helped more people, that did not cap the amount of money or the amount of people who could get these $1,400 checks. But he agreed to compromise. That's what President Biden did. Compromise. Let's compromise with these criminal Republicans, shall we? Yet again, as Democrats, let's do that. Let's see where that takes us. Huh? Are you ready? Why are they doing that? I've given you my reasons why in previous episodes. Why you've got these Senate Democrats doing this and why you've got President Biden doing it. But I want you to please call the White House switchboard, 202. I can remember this number now off the top of my head because I've been calling it. Because I really think this is important. 202-456-1414. That's the the White House switchboard. The comment line is 202-456-1111. That's the White House comment line. And by the way, with the previous guy in the White House, the guy that the terrorist who was behind the terrorist attack on January 6th, he had that line closed. So you couldn't even make a phone call in there because he dismantled that. So if you had a problem with what was going on in that White House or that shite house under him, you couldn't call in. They dismantled that line. He did. So I want you to use that phone number, those numbers I've just given you. Please make use of them. Please make use of them. Cut off the comment line. You can't get to talk to us. Again, this country is, I've said it, this country's in trouble. And I can see this coming. I think you can too. I think you know it. But we just got to pray that we're wrong, don't we? And I just think that if you believe in praying, or if you don't believe in praying, just hope that it's wrong. That we're wrong about the outcome. Because to be compromising with these people, look, the American public did not vote. 81 million plus of us did not vote for Joe Biden to be compromising with anybody. But we knew, he said, we want to unite the nation. You know, he did say that a million times. It's not like we didn't know that this was coming. One thing we have to do, apart from calling the White House and letting a vice president, I almost called her senator again, Vice President Harris, we've got to let her know she's got the power to overturn the Senate parliamentarian so that you have the $15 an hour provision in that Senate bill. But there's going to be a big fight about this darn bill. Can you believe this? Of course you can believe it because it goes on all the time. Please read that article from the LA Times. I'm going to link to it. But one of the solutions, I think, is to start running more progressive Democrats for these Senate seats. I'm telling you, because Kirsten Sinema, I'd rather have a Democrat there. Of course I would. But right now, would you rather have Kirsten Sinema as your Democratic senator, one of the two of them in Arizona, or would you rather have a progressive who is going to fight for $15 an hour? Why would you not want a minimum wage of $15 an hour? And that's not even that much. Come on. Other countries, these wages are much higher. Much higher. Higher. It's just insane. Here in California, it's 15, I think. Yeah, I think San Francisco is 15 at least. In Seattle, Washington, it's 15. Washington State, I think I think it is. So come on. And it's just crazy. The federal minimum wage right now is around $7.30 or $7.40. We need to run progressives in the Senate. We need to run them all over the country, locally, state, and federal. We've got to run them. And you see the difference. And we need the moderate Democratic wing of the Democratic Party is disintegrating, but it's also still trying to hold on to power. It's very much in the ascendancy at the very same time as it's disintegrating. I'm telling you. And this is what's going to be the next battle. I've talked about this before, but this is the chapter whatever of the next frontier, for lack of a better term. Speaking of language. Is the next battle that's going to be fought. Who controls this bloomin' party? It's clear who controls the Republican Party. Nazis do. That's clear. And that's not even an outrageous thing to say because it's the truth. But who's controlling the Democratic Party? I know the answer to that, or I would give you my answer to that, which I've given you before. Is the corporate interests do. It's not the FDR wing. FDR turning in his grave. It's not him. It's not the wing that says we want to go back to the New Deal era of this is how we should be doing things. This is not the FDR Democratic Party. This is not. It's not the New Deal Party anymore. That's gone. Gone are the days of the second Bill of Rights. The Bill of Rights of everybody should have a job, should have quality education, should have a roof over their heads, food to eat, health care. That's what FDR talked about. And what happened to that? Well, study your history. But look what's happened. FDR, LBJ, the Great Society programs. We are a long way off from that in this country now. Long way off of it. We've gone so far rightward. We are falling off a cliff. I'm sorry if I sound like Henny Penny, the sky is falling. But do you think that the people who really need that money, that $1,400, and are now not going to get it, or some people who aren't getting this vaccine who really should be, do you think that they disagree with me that the sky is falling? I don't think so. Or maybe I could be wrong. Thank you very much for listening to this edition of the Politicrat. I'm Omar Moore. It's all happening at the Politicrat daily podcast online store, and you can go there right now at the-politicrat.myshopify.com. Lots of good new items, brand new, designed by yours truly. So please head to the Politicrat daily podcast online store now. Thank you very much.